we bring in Kevin Bowen, Colts.com featured writer, to talk all things Colts. He's on the Menard Studio Hotline. Kevin, how's things?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you?
You're doing very well. You got Thanksgiving plans? Are you allowed to have Thanksgiving plans, or the team putting you to work tomorrow, or Thursday?
Yes. Unfortunately, it will be a little bit of work on Thursday. Chuck Pagano kind of bumped the schedule up a little bit, so it's an earlier practice, so should be out of the complex early afternoon. But unfortunately, it's pretty much just a normal Thursday in the NFL.
Well, at least don't have to travel. The game's at home this weekend. And
right.
We'll get into that Tampa Bay game a little bit later on, because I think now with the way Tampa Bay handled Philadelphia last week, that game is far more interesting than maybe it looked like before the season got started when you looked ahead at the schedule. But not to get too far ahead of ourselves, let's look at the Atlanta game over the weekend. Ugly win got thrown out there, but hey, a win's a win. And we were talking about it, would have been Monday, yesterday, and just kind of recapping how things went over the weekend. And I had mentioned to Jimmy some of the comments that I heard from guys like, obviously DeQuell Jackson had the big play there that resulted in the pick six. Luck didn't play, but he was asked by Zach Kiefer of the Indianapolis Star, hey, kind of an ugly win. And according to the tweet that Zach sent out, Luck's response was, hey, it's still a blanking win. So, and DeQuell Jackson had, in his comments to Stephen Holder from the Indy Star, dropping some S-bombs. So I don't know, has the attitude changed a little bit? Do they feel like the backs are against the wall, kind of a cornered animal to some degree? Is that where they're at now at this point in the season?
Yeah, I guess to a degree. I would say that the Jackson quote, and we're all in the same scrum for that. That was more of a quote in reference to his pick six, like an oh bleep moment,
yes.
Like I've been on the run fake,
right.
I'm sucked in. Now it's like oh bleep, I got to get back and make sure I'm in pass coverage. I think it's one of those things where those guys realized how big of a win it was when they got back in the locker room and heard that Houston had beat the Jets. And that, obviously what Jacksonville did last Thursday, the AFC South just hasn't been this competitive approaching Thanksgiving in a long, long time. And to go on the road and to beat a team in Atlanta that, is currently in the NFC playoff picture, I think that they knew how important that was, considering you still have your backup quarterback. You started off, you were really fortunate to only be 3-0 midway through the first quarter with those two early turnovers and where you put your defense in a position early on in the game. So I think it was one of those things where a comeback victory, knowing that now you came out of the bye week and, back-to-back wins over two teams that are currently in the playoffs. I think that was more of where it was, okay, it's time to go now. This is late November, going into December. This is where this team needs to be playing its best football. And I wouldn't call it its best football, but a win is a win, and in the NFL, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, that's right. It's still they're 5-5 now, which looks a lot better than 4-6. That's certainly the case. A lot of talk about Hasselbeck, Vinatieri, the quote-unquote old guys, which I hate to say because I'm 39, so I'm just a year younger than Matt Hasselbeck. But if we want to pile in somebody else that may be a little bit on the older side of things, DeQuell Jackson is one of those guys, been in the league for a long time, and has had his fair share of criticism since he became part of the team. But currently, looking at the stats at NFL.com, he leads the league in combined tackles with 100. So here's a guy that, maybe he's not the greatest in pass coverage, but he's been a pretty solid, really this defense as a whole has kind of stepped up over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and he's definitely the leader of that unit. He's the guy that gets everybody on the same page. And I would say that him and Jarrell Freeman especially, those inside linebackers have been playing really, really well, really since the Carolina game. I remember in that game, both of them had some very nice open field tackles that kept the Colts in that game. Then I thought they played well against Denver, holding that rushing attack to minimal yards, and then again on Sunday down in Atlanta. So I think those guys have played very well, and Jackson's a guy who has never been to the playoffs until last season. He was in Cleveland for his whole career, so he wasn't used to winning, and he was very real and very honest last year about just what it meant to get to the playoffs. And he's one of those guys that, you really see his value, I think, when you talk to coaches and realize just what all he does pre-snap for that defense. He's a very durable guy. He just does not sit out many games, if any at all. So he's a big, I think, key cog to this defense. And that pick six, it started with a Pat McAfee, Dante Moncrief down in the punt at the 1-yard line. That's a play that won't probably appear on any highlight packages, but that play, I think, really set up the momentum for then Atlanta back in the shadow of their own end zone, that pick six. then obviously tied the game and was really the difference. So I think credit to Pat and Vontae as well, because that's a pump play that Donte Moncrief usually isn't even out on the field. He's a guy that doesn't really play a lot of special teams. They put him in at gunner for that specific reason, to go down there and try to make a play inside the 10-yard line, and then obviously Jackson had the play of the game.
Well, you mentioned that's a play that Moncrief's not usually in on, and then the game is sealed up with a Kobe Fleener interception, which is probably the only time that you'll ever say that in his entire career. Are they at a point now? I mean, as Pagano said, look, we're going to do whatever it takes, and if that means putting guys in positions that they normally wouldn't play, whatever it takes to get the win, is that where they're at now?
I think especially, too, in those type of situations. I mean, those are very game-specific situations. You know, you look at the punt down by Donte Moncrief. It was 21-14 at that point. The Colts offense, you know, both teams kind of been trading punts back and forth. The Colts had scored that late touchdown in the third quarter to make it 21-14, but you felt like for them to really win that game, they had to create a play. They had to make a play via special teams. They had to make a play via defense. They thought they had the big punt return with Quan Bray, but that was called back for a Daniel Adongo holding penalty. So the special teams, you know, I felt like, you know, they felt like they needed to make a play. So Moncrief went in as a gunner, made that play, and then late game, I think you see the Hail Mary. The reason Kobe Fleener's back there is because think about the Houston game earlier in the year when they had the Hail Mary to end the first half, and Greg Toller kind of, you know, boxed out the rest of the Colts defenders, and I think it was Jalen Strong came down with that. So I think Fleener was actually out there on the play prior, I want to say, and I think Atlanta kind of threw a little dump pass to Roddy White just to get a few more yards and make the Hail Mary a little bit easier for Matt Ryan. So those game-specific situations, when the Colts needed to make all the plays in the fourth quarter, I can't think of one that they really didn't make, and that's on every side of the ball. A Frank Gore screen, a Donte Moncrief 3rd and 2, I mean, all those little plays added up to the DeQuell pick six, the Vinatieri field goal, and then the interception to end it.
Kevin Bowen, our guest, Colts.com featured writer. It's Ford and O'Brien, ESPN Evansville 105.3 and online, ESPNEvansville.com. The win did not come without its share of, I guess, bittersweetness to some degree. What's the latest on Anthony Castonzo?
Yeah, week to week with a sprained MCL, and so anytime Chuck Pagano says week to week, that usually means at least a couple of weeks. And the Colts just have never played without Anthony Castonzo in this era. It'll be his first missed start since 2011. The guy's been a rock. He had played every snap this year for this team, so he played the most snaps of any offensive lineman in the NFL last year. So it's going to be another domino effect for a unit that I had to think had started to improve and had been protecting a little bit better with that kind of new look line that we saw in week 3 when Joe Wright slid in the starting lineup and Hugh Thornton slid in as well. So I'd expect Joe Wright to slide over to left tackle. He's kind of been a plug-and-play guy throughout his career here in Indianapolis. He's never started a game at left tackle, has practiced there, though. So I think Wright will play left tackle. Jack Muhort will now go back out to right tackle, would be my guess. That's where he ended the game on Sunday when Castonzo exited. I think it was with 3 snaps left. And then in the interior, I think are where the kind of the questions lie. If the Colts keep the same line that they had to end the Atlanta game, it'll be Lance Lewis at left guard, where he started at the beginning of the year. Jonathan Harrison at center, and then Hugh Thornton at right guard. So the Colts don't have a ton of options, but that would be my guess as the starting 5 until Castonzo can get back in the lineup.
Do you think with Castonzo out, we see even a little heavier dose of the 1-2 punch with Gore and Bradshaw?
Definitely, I think you got to get those guys involved as well in the run, in the passing game too, and that's something that we saw on Sunday down in Atlanta. That halfback only had 1 completion further than 9 yards through the air, and that was kind of a Kobe Fleener seam route midway through the third quarter. Gore and Bradshaw caught all 9 of their targets, so I think that's something that is kind of an element that Matt brings to the game, is he really wants to find the tight ends and the running backs and let those guys make those plays. So, yes, lean on them in the running game as well, but when you do go to the air, I think involving the tight ends and the running backs is definitely a staple of what Matt is trying to do when he's in there under center.
As far as other injuries go, Kevin, where are we at with Adams and Vontae Davis?
Vontae Davis day today with that hamstring injury. Never good to have a hamstring injury when you're a cornerback, and never good when you see Mike Evans on the schedule this weekend and then Antonio Brown next weekend. So that'll be one to watch. Davis typically plays through nagging injuries, but again, a hamstring is never ideal for him. Chuck Pagano's hopeful that he'll get on the practice field Wednesday or Thursday. Sounds like the same target date for Mike Adams coming back from that ankle injury. I will say I thought the rookie Clayton Gathers, the safety filling in for Mike Adams, played extremely well on Sunday down in Atlanta. It was his hit that knocked Vontae Freeman out of the game, but I thought he played well in pass coverage as well, and I think he definitely has a future back there for the Colts. And then the other injury, I guess, to watch, it still could be a couple of weeks, but Philip Dorsett, the first-round pick, sounds like he'll get back to work with some trainers. He's approaching his 4th week in a recovery period. That was 4 to 6 weeks for that fibula injury. So it looks like Philip Dorsett is kind of trending in the right direction and could be back in early December.
We got Tampa Bay coming to town on Sunday, a team that I think, when myself included, when you look at they were 2-14 last year. They get the number 1 pick in the draft. You assume Jameis Winston's going to have some growing pains to go through, and he's had his moments this season. He's had some good games. He's had some down games, and they just go out and they trounce Philadelphia over the weekend. Doug Martin runs for, I think, over 200 all-purpose yards. Mike Evans was huge again. So this is probably now a much different game, considering not only how Tampa Bay played last week, but how the Colts have played this entire season. Game plan for, can they rattle Jameis Winston's cage enough to kind of get him out of a rhythm?
I think you got to stop Doug Martin. Like you said, it was pretty remarkable. I was looking through the rushing stats earlier this week, and only 2 players in the NFL, I think, have more than 800 yards rushing. And Adrian Peterson's obviously one of them, and Doug Martin is the other. I mean, that just shocked the year that he's having down there in Tampa. It's a contract year for him. And he's a guy that, was a Pro Bowler early on in his career, but kind of injuries have hindered him in the past couple of seasons. I think it starts with stopping Doug Martin. I thought the Colts did a very nice job without Henry Anderson in the lineup of shutting down kind of Tevin Coleman and Atlanta's running game. I know it wasn't the same once Freeman went out after that big run, but I thought they did a good job there. Now can they do it against, a bona fide number 1 back? And then as far as Winston, you got to rattle him, and he just hasn't been rattled. I mean, he's been very, very impressive. I think Tampa's won like 4 of their last 6, and in those 6 games, Winston's only thrown a pick in 1 of those games. So the rookie woes, the rookie wall, I mean, he's ran through that wall. So he's been very, very solid, and I think is a major reason why Tampa Bay is really a sleeper playoff team out there in the NFC. So I think from an offensive standpoint, it's going to be a similar game plan to what we've seen. Like you guys mentioned, a heavy dose of Frank Gore and Ahmad Bradshaw at Hasselbeck, distributing the ball all around, not really taking a ton of deep shots down the field, although the Colts do want to hit on some more chunk plays. I think T.Y. Hilton's got to be involved in that. But then on the other side of the ball, it's stopping the run. Tampa Bay's 2nd in the league in rushing. It starts with Doug Martin. Jameis Winston is a weapon inside the red zone. So, I don't think many people thought this would be 2 5-5 teams when the schedule came out back in April. But if the playoffs started today, the Colts would be in it, and Tampa Bay would be knocking on the door. So, should be a very competitive game Sunday in Lucas Oil.
Great stuff as always, Kevin. Enjoy. Try not to work too hard on Thursday. Hopefully, you get a chance to dine a little bit on some turkey and some stuffing. We'll talk again next week.
Have a great Thanksgiving, guys.
Thanks. You too,
Thanks.
Kevin.